Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode, we welcome back comic book retailer Paul Eaton to the show, who is from Galactic Comics and Collectibles, who's also a sponsor of this episode, galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. But he's here to talk about the TMNT movie, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990, to do a discussion, review, whatever you want to call it, on this 40th anniversary of the TMNT Turtles, first comic book coming out in 1984 from right here in New England. So we discussed the movie, the Turtles, some of the movie too, the legacy of Turtles movies, and so on and so forth right here on the podcast with Paul Eaton of Galactic Comics and Collectibles. Before you listen, check out us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, all that stuff. Rate, review, subscribe, all that stuff over on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can check out our YouTube channel now, as well as more information, reviews, features, all that stuff over on capesandtights.com. But this is comic book retailer Paul Eaton of Galactic Comics and Collectibles discussing the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie and more. Enjoy, everyone. What's up, Toots?
Whoa, what is going on? It's been a minute.
This is not. So this is.
Did you just call me Toots?
Yeah. And then he goes on to the other, like, Sugarfoot or whatever all the other ones are. All these really offensive, sexist terminologies, and he just doesn't get it. But this is not the first time the Capes and Tights has technically discussed the TMNT movie, and I purposely didn't go back and listen to when Adam and I did it, like episode 6 or something like that, which is like, this is episode 183 or 84 or something like that, and so that's way back,
coming quick,
because of the fact that I didn't want to like influence my discussion here. Like, now people can actually reaction to both, and that was early days, so I don't even know what we discussed or what we talked about in that. So but it's the 40th anniversary of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So the actual Mirage Studio comic book came out in the summer. Or was it March? Maybe it was summer. I don't know. It was whatever.
I feel like it was summer, but that might not be anything.
1984. 1984. So it was. It's not going to be telling me exactly. Oh, April 30th. So April 30th, 1984. The first issue came out of TMNT. And so we could talk about the original comic books and all that stuff, but I was like, you know what? We do movie reviews on here. And so why don't we talk the movie from 1990, which is going to be a 40th anniversary in 2030. So maybe we'll review it again, discuss it then.
Man.
But TMNT, honestly, to me, one of the most, I like this cover, this version of the cover, because there's multiple versions of a cover or poster for this movie. I love this one the most. I don't know what it is. It's just the simplistic nature of it that they didn't do very much in movies. Like this could have been, well, the back of it is another version, like the book here, the one we talked about before we started recording. This is also a cover.
Or that right there. We have the original release movie posters in store right now of that.
See?
Yeah, I gotta frame it. It's what a find. 1990 movie posters. And it's one. It's them coming up out of the sewer.
Remind me, I think towards the end, I want to read there's a couple of quotes in the back of it that I think are pretty cool if we can remember to do that. But yeah, so we decided we'd discuss this for the, in honor of the 40th anniversary of the Turtles, co-created by the one and only Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird here in New England, where we're from.
It sucks because that means we're getting old.
Yeah.
Like, our childhood stuff is celebrating 40 years. This is the 40th year of Transformers as well. Like, everything's turning 40. I'm like, wow, this...
Yeah, right. Well, the 25th anniversary of Fight Club is this year, the movie. And I was like, Jesus, like that seems like it came out last year, but no, it was 1999. I also just celebrated this weekend. We talked about this, my 20th high school reunion. So I also felt old because I'm like, oh, geez, bro. It was, I'll tell you right now, Paul, I don't miss high school.
No.
Like, I don't miss high school.
No.
I realize that there are people who have grown up, and there are people who haven't grown up. And I remember the cliques. The cliques were still in existence. And the problem, we live in a small area, right? We live in Maine, but we live in this is a big, small area, if that makes any sense to anybody who's listening, is that we still run into a lot of the same people if you went to high school in Bangor. In this area. And so
I'm sure there's a lot of people that like moved away, this and that, but then there's the rest of us that did not move away.
But most of those people are the ones that moved away. Most of them didn't come because who's flying
Right.
back to Maine for their 20th high school reunion nowadays?
Right,
With
right, right.
Facebook and all the social media, like I know what so and so is doing. I don't care that much. My family may have moved away or yada yada yada. And I think in their 10th reunion, they did it on the weekend of Thanksgiving in the hopes that if someone was coming back to visit their
Coming
family,
back, and I guess that makes
let's just go out and have some drinks or whatever. But like,
yeah, it's kind of weird.
There was like each side had like the people that all still hang out with each other. There's like 10 people over in the corner. I'm like, you guys, like the next day, there's pictures of them online on a boat because it's not like you're up for the weekend. Cool, we'll do this. It's just because that's what they would do on a Sunday. And so I'm like, what's the whole point?
Any group from high school that I would want to see are the same people I see on a regular anyway. Like,
and because it's 10 years from now, I likely will still make an appearance like I did over the weekend with my 30th, because I think it's just interesting to see people grow. Taylor and I were able to be kid free for one night, and so we went to be able to do this. And it was
worth going just for that.
Yeah. We sat and watched, and people watched and saw. Like I had a conversation with people. The camel that broke the straw of the back, the straw that broke the camel's back was at there was a certain point we went to have a discussion with a certain person. And the person was obliterated. And we're talking, we showed up at 7 for the start of the reunion. We left at 8:30. And this person showed up at 7:30, 7:45-ish, and was obliterated by that time because they had gone and got pre-drinks with some friends at a restaurant before they went.
Yeah.
It was completely drunk by 8:30, and this thing went till midnight.
Ooh.
And so I was just like, oh, this is how it's going to go. We're like, let's go get some food. We went and got some fast food, sat in the car, watched Seinfeld on our phone until we had to go pick up our daughter at a friend's house. So that was our that's how you talk about feeling old, Paul.
Yeah.
20th reunion, and we sat in the car, ate fast food because we're like, we need to go home, and we were in bed by like 10 o'clock. So that's being old.
Imagine how old the person that was obliterated at 8:30 felt the next day, though.
Dude, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I'm way too old for that. I think I would like to think I keep a good level consistency now. Yeah. Like, I'm too mature for being that obliterated. I'm out.
And I need to leave, Paul, because we sell our beer, Orono Brewing Company beer, to this restaurant that is outside. This is a restaurant in the Hilton that this grand ballroom is in. And they had a little bar set up in the grand ballroom to help us, so you wouldn't have to go to the restaurant to get a beer at the bar and come back and so on and so forth. You could. It's down the hall, so they're like, yeah, no problem, whatever. No Orono Brewing Company beer, no Wild Main Hard Seltzer. They had Marsh Island, they had Gagan's, and they had High Noon. So like our quote unquote competitors that are in the area, they're in the backyard. And national competitor in High Noon and our seltzer. And I went to high school there. No one from Marsh Island or Gagan's went to high school at this reunion, from this reunion. So like, wouldn't it make sense to? And so I was like, I jokingly texted one of our sales reps and was like, hey, 30th reunion. Let's make sure we have beer here.
Yeah, absolutely.
At that time,
we went hiking yesterday, and I swung into a little small like mom and pop shop to grab some drinks, and there was OBC right on the rack. I was like, all right. Doing it right.
I went to a wedding in the middle of nowhere,
Friends of Acadia.
In the middle of nowhere, I went to a wedding in this barn in the middle of nowhere. They had a bar and they had tubular. And so I was like, this place is what, 7 minutes from the actual brewery, and so on and so forth. But Daniel Kraus, when we had Daniel up to Bangor, that's the hotel he stayed at. So I remember that parking lot very well. It's a weird spot, but it was fun. But yeah, that was, 2004. So this movie would have been 14 years old. And at that point, we probably thought it was old when I was in 2004. But 1990.
Now look where we are.
So 1990, I was 6 when the movie came out. Which I don't know if I would have. I don't know if I saw it right away. I was probably in that time, but I don't think I didn't go to the theaters for it. But I know I would have saw it on VHS. On demand, right? I saw it on streaming in 1990.
Yeah, no, the first Netflix. Well, here's my story of it. I saw it opening night in theaters.
There you go. See,
and that was little 8-year-old Paul with my uncle. My uncle took me, and I made sure that I got there early and stood in line so I could have my seat, which apparently at 8 years old was about the time I identified where my seat in the theater is, and I still sit in the same area. Like, that's where I go. And I remember specifically, I got there and I sat down and my uncle sat with me, and then like the place filled up, it was sold out. And this usher comes along with people that were getting there late. Like the credits were getting ready to start,
Yeah.
sort of, or like the
Yeah.
previews. And they asked me to move. They're like, "Oh, can you move down so these people can sit in a row?" And I said, "No." And
This
the
is my
usher was like,
seat.
"Excuse me?" And I said, "No." I said, "I've been here for hours." No. And my uncle just looked at him and was like, "You want to argue with an 8-year-old?" And then the people were like, "We'll split up," and they moved like
Yeah.
that
And
way.
then
But I'm like,
afterwards,
"No,
you're
no,
like,
no."
after there's your complete asshole. So you're like, I should have moved over because these guys, I don't want to sit next to these people anyway.
Little
But no,
8-year-old Paul wasn't going to stand for it.
but yeah, I mean that's back when theaters. That's when you saw it. I mean, if you think about it
Yeah.
nowadays, a lot it's so quickly to streaming for a lot of things nowadays, unless they're extremely successful, which this was. So maybe this
Yeah.
would have been in that category now, where it's in the theaters for 6 months before it even exits the theaters because they're just gonna try to get as much money as they possibly can. Because this was like a what, 14 million dollar budget, and it made $202 million. So like
Yeah.
in 1990, that's an extremely successful movie.
It made a fortune.
And so this would have been in the theaters for as long as possible, even if it came out in 2024, because that's how they do. I mean, Deadpool, Wolverine will be in the theaters for a while, and Inside Out, same thing, Inside Out too, because it's going to make money until it
Right. So leave it
exits
there.
the theater.
Why
So
move
leave it
it?
there.
Yeah. Now
And
there's movies
so
that come out there. I'm like, oh, I'll go to the theater and see it, and it's streaming before I even realize
what was it just that said that? There was just one
that
that
like
said
I missed going to the theater. I'm like, oh, it's already on. I can just watch it at
it,
home.
I just saw an announcement of one that was like the end of this month. It was not even going to be 30 days in the theater. It was like, I forget what it was. Crow seems like it will go there because Crow opened up abysmally and it's got 6% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I haven't heard much good
But there was
about
something
it.
else. There was another one where I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's only going to last 30 days. And then there's other planned movies like that. Like our buddy here on the podcast, Jay Bun and Singa, wrote a book called The Killer's Game. Has a movie that came out by the time this hits streaming waves. The movie will be in theaters. That he had it optioned 30 years ago, and finally is being made into a movie.
Wow.
But
Holy
that's the
smokes.
plan of that one is 30 days in the theater, then streaming, and that's just that was the deal they signed and the whole thing, and so
Like
not saying
now,
it's going to be exiting the theaters potentially, but it's going to be available on streaming as
right.
well.
It's crazy because like I don't know, the theater scene just isn't what it was back when this movie came out. It's not such a relevant thing.
Mm-hmm. I wish it was.
I bet you
I
probably do better with your streaming service as far as being a property owner than you do in the theater. Like it just
and I think that people who want to go see movies in the theater will go see movies in the theater. So it is that during the pandemic, when they did the whole like, we're going to release it in the theater, but we're also going to release it on streaming at the same time. I think the theater owners and the movie production studio owners are afraid that it's going to cut into finances. But in the same sense, I do feel like there are people who are like Deadpool Wolverine. If I hadn't gotten COVID, we would have been in the theater to see it. Do you know what I mean? Instead of watching it from home. And same thing with a lot of people. I would like, there's certain movies you're going to go see in the theaters and so on and so forth. I think that people who don't want to go to the theaters to see it are going to wait. So you're not making their money anyway. You're just waiting for it to be in streaming or purchasing it at home anyway. And so I think in the future, they could do like opening weekend, maybe one extra weekend after that. So like 2 weeks, and then have it stay in the theaters and have it be $25 on digital. And I think that they could make it work, and I think they'd still make a bunch of money. I mean, they wouldn't be billion-dollar movies anymore because they would lose the person who went to see it the second time, because I feel like you'd go see it in the theaters and then you'd buy it at home. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't maybe potentially goes 2 or 3 times to
you
go
might
see the movie,
you might get it a little bit later after the fact. So, I mean, our local theaters is now playing a lot of vintage movies. They've started going out and getting them. And man, if TMNT was playing on the big screen, like hell yeah, I'd go to I mean, I just like going to the theater. My wife loves going to the theater. Liz and I are big like movie buffs and like going and
well,
like,
Kevin
I
Smith
think it'd
had
be awesome to go
mentioned
see it on theater again.
Kevin Smith had mentioned he owns Smod Castle Cinemas in Red Bank, New Jersey, and he buys those classic movies to put on for a weekend or a single night, and he charges $25 or whatever to go see it. And a lot of times, because he's a podcaster and critic and all that stuff, he does like a question and answer thing afterwards, so there's more to it than just showing the movie again. But a lot of those movies, like for an example, for me, I was born in 86. So I was 4 when this movie came out. I said 6, so I was 4 when this movie came out. And so I was basically my son's age, right? There's no way that I'm like, I don't go to the theaters with my son right now because he'd be like halfway through, be like, oh, can we go home? I need to go to the bathroom.
Done, or he'd
can I play
like
the cars?
fall asleep, or
can I have a snack? You know, like whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but that the I forget what I was saying about this. I think I was going with it. No, that's my son's age. I was 4 when it came out. But
Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith is that
There we
I
go.
would now go see it in the theaters. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, because I never got the experience to go see it on the big screen with the big sound. And hell, the movie theaters are better nowadays, meaning that the sound and the screen quality,
Yeah, the sound quality
actual
stuff, yeah.
Some theater seats are the same. They are literally the same from 1984.
Yeah.
But no, the experience is there again. So like all the Indiana Jones movies, I never saw any of those in the theaters because I was too young. The Star Wars movies, those movies, they make bank. I think if they just took Star Wars and New Hope and was like, screw it, May the 4th be with you, we're putting this in the theater for 1 weekend only, I think they'd make millions of dollars on doing awesome. That. And if you did the original ones, not the remodel, like the ones that Lucas had redone and all that stuff, like
right, not the remaster, the true original,
and bring the experience back to it, you know. And honestly, they still make millions if they brought the experience back to then. $3 tickets, $4 tickets, whatever it may be. If you literally got to spend a weekend at a theater like it was 1970, whatever, and so on, I think they would make millions of dollars off of it because people would flock to it. And I think this is one of those.
Get your concession stands back to reasonable pricing.
I mean, they're doing it now with movies that we all did see. Like they're doing it now with movies like, oh, Titanic, and I'm like, well, Titanic isn't that old in the scheme of things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they're doing it for movies that came out in like 2014. Oh, 10-year anniversary, we're putting in the theaters. No, show me the movies that are 40th anniversary or 30th anniversary.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to
see.
Love to go see. I miss Jaws had just played. I would love to see Jaws on the big screen. I wasn't even alive when Jaws came out, so that'd be awesome. And I mean, this movie I saw in the theater the night it came out. I would love to go see this on the big screen again. It'd be awesome.
And I think that, and I don't know any of the details, and I know what Will and Jay have talked about it on their streams, so we can talk about it here. But if you are in the Bangor area, I believe you can check out the social media for Bangor Comic Toy Con. But I believe they are having a streaming, some sort of screening at Gracie Theater at Hudson College. So that's one thing to look at. Hudson University now, isn't it? To go look at that somewhere. I don't know any of the details. I'm not here to promote it in that sense, but I'm saying like there is an opportunity for some people to go see it in some sort of theater.
Maybe it's the first time see it on a big screen right there with the guys from Bangor Comic and Toy Con.
So it's March 30th, 1990. So I actually wasn't even 4 yet. I was actually 3 because I was born in May. So so it made $202 million on the box office for 1990. Is pretty good. I didn't look up the comparison to other movies that came out in 1990, but I'm sure it wasn't a slump. I'm sure that was a pretty well-made money. And it probably might have been one of the most profitable ones. There might have been other movies that beat it, but so on and so forth. But it's just sort of like, we don't like to base things on these that much, but a 6.8 on IMDb, which is pretty good, honestly, for this movie.
And from a movie that's from 1990 that has some of its hokiness, right? Like all there. You know what's funny? So I think I like this movie more now, and I do every year, than I did when I was a kid. As a kid, I was like such a cartoon fan that I'm like, well, where's Rocksteady? Where's Bebop? Why aren't the Foot Soldiers robots? You know what I mean? I had all of the this isn't the cartoon series. And the older I've gotten, the more I appreciate this movie. I appreciate what they did with it and how they made it, and the great parts in it that they put in for the adults that are in that theater with the little kid.
Yeah, and I
but
think
how it's still there's a couple scenes I can see about the complaints from the 90s back then of the violence in the Ninja Turtle movie. Like there's a couple, but they're not that. I don't like Washington really wasn't that bad.
It's the fear they've had recently when they made the Wolverine movie, when any superhero related movie, an R-rated movie, the fear that the overarching production companies are like, oh, we're gonna get backlash because kids are going to go in to see this movie not realizing it's an R-rated movie, and parents are not going to be able to bring their kids because it is an R-rated movie, and yada. And so like I can see that complaint. But let's be honest, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 1984 was not created for young kids. It morphed into that over the years with the animated series and so on and so forth. So if you're
the toy push, the big push for the toys, and that gave the cartoon series, but your initial Ninja Turtles, it's funny now, is Nickelodeon property, right?
Yeah,
because the initial comic series is more like noir. It's raw, it's violent, it's gritty. Spoiler alert, the first issue they kill the Shredder.
Which is one of those things that obviously they decided at some point, we're like, oh, that was probably stupid, but the script
we kind of made what seems to be the coolest villain that we came up with, and we killed him in that first issue.
That's the best thing about comics and pop culture is you can bring them back. The script is based loosely on the early TMNT comics that could get mentioned, including stories of their origins, rooftop battles, a sojourning to the farmhouse and battling Shredder. All that came from the original comics, and then the elements were taken from the 1980s animated series, such as the Turtles colored bandanas, because obviously the original was black and white, or grayscale or blue scale, whatever you want to call it, and their love for pizza. That's actually not in the comics. That's actually from the cartoon. And
which was
comics.
the perfect thing to like hook every kid, right? Mm-hmm. Every kid loves pizza.
Domino's. Like Domino's pull on that thing and having that product placement in that was phenomenal. But also elements of like Michelangelo's character, April O'Neil being a television reporter and not a lab assistant, is also stolen from the animated series. So I actually appreciate that, because they did mix both, and they did say,
a good blend. It's a nice.
What can we make it work in that sense? But I do agree with you that this movie is far better now than it was years ago. But I also think there's multiple factors in that. One is you're more of an adult, so you can see things and you can compare. Like if you show this to a 10-year-old now, they're gonna be like, wait, what? Because the actual suits and the practical effects and so on and so forth is not as up to par as they would want it to be with CGI and special effects and so on and so
Emma,
forth.
my middle daughter's a big action sort of, she's an action junkie. She likes like the superhero stuff, the fight scenes, this and that. She didn't even want to watch this with me. I was disappointed. I went to go put it on. Nah.
And then also there's a nostalgic factor to it. Like it already gets like, if you have a scale of 1 to 10 and you're like, okay, I'm going to watch this movie, it starts at a 4. It can't get lower than a 4 because the nostalgia gives it that 4. And then you add in all the elements. You're like, oh, cool. It's a 10 out of 10. It's like, well, it's not really a 10 out of 10. Let's be honest. But it's that, and it's the first. It's the New Hope. It's the, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's the first of a classic series. And a lot of people hate number 3 so much that makes number 1 that more superior than it is.
I still have yet to actually finish number 3.
No, I love number 3. It's gone. It's whatever. But yeah, so it was written by Todd Langen and Bobby Herbeck and directed by Steve Barron, based on the characters from Eastman and Peter Laird. Obviously starred Judith Hoag as April O'Neil, Elias Koteas as Casey Jones, and obviously it's hard to list all the people who played the characters because the Turtles were all voiced by people, and then there's people who puppeteered some of them, and there's people who acted in the stunt suits of some of them. So there's like 30 people who actually were involved in making the 4 Turtles and Splinter.
The Turtles were definitely like that. That was a labor of love from these creators. They worked hard to get you,
and that was Jim
Turtles
Henson.
that look more or less like, all right, they're definitely costumes, but they look more or less like you're looking at what Ninja Turtles would look like if they were giant human-sized turtles.
Yes, and for the Jim Henson Company. Jim Henson Company did this, and they almost didn't and there's certain elements of it, like not having any guns, no actual blood. There's specific things, like if you think about it, some of the characters have different weapons. There's no katanas, right?
No, Leo still has his katanas.
There was some sort of like,
he still has
maybe they are allowed to because of it, but there was something that was like we didn't want. Jim Henson's company wasn't going to do it because of the violence.
More often than not, I will say that Leo's like holding his swords, but never really does anything with them.
And so I think there were some like concessions they had to make in that, but having Jim Henson's name attached to it, those suits are phenomenal. Obviously, like we mentioned in the shop, they're probably in a million pieces right now because of the fact that they were deteriorating even during the movie.
Yeah, they're just rotting away. Yeah,
because of what they were made like.
The latex and stuff of them are just gone.
They should have sold like little tiny pieces of it in like little like plastic containers so you can like have like.
I'd probably be on that.
I own one. Jay Cochran from Forecastle Tattoo and Bangor Comic and Toy Con has a piece of the boat from Jaws. Which is pretty cool, like a splinter from the boat. I was like, that's pretty badass. So I would do the same thing with one of those suits. But yeah, I mean, it was darker, like we mentioned. So this movie came out in 1990 as the first feature film for TMNT, and it's still the best feature film to this day in the TMNT realm. I think it's now followed, in my opinion, by the Mutant Mayhem, which is the one that came out this year, which is the animated one.
I would also agree. I have my issues with the new animated one, but overall the animated one is fun. I enjoy it.
And then maybe number 2 in this series is in there with that, because there's some key elements that when you think back to the 90s and these movies, there's sometimes I morph one and two of these two
Merge
movies
them
together.
together.
And there's
Yeah.
things like the canister of ooze and all that stuff. You're like, oh wait, and that's the second movie, not the first movie.
Yeah.
Kino is a huge character in number 2, which makes me mad because Casey Jones is one of my favorite Turtles characters.
He was so good.
Elias
I
is
love
phenomenal
Casey,
in
the
this.
actor who played him is like spot on. They couldn't have done a better job of casting and making Casey.
But taking Casey away and putting in someone like Ernie Reyes Jr. playing Kino is it'd be like the second, like, okay, it's not Casey. Cool. This was this next best thing. And so that's why I think that the first and second one kind of merged together. So maybe it's number 1, number 2, and then Mutant Mayhem, and then everything else is behind it. Like there's just like not even a question on any of that stuff. But it was kind of funny how much this has stayed in the pinnacle of TMNT lore. The 1990 film, darker, but still had the silliness. So I
think it shows how well they did it because it has the dark, it has the silly, it has. I mean, the writing of this movie was well done for sticking to Ninja Turtles and what it is and being entertaining. Yeah, and like you said, it's goofy, it's funny, it makes fun of itself some. It does
reminds me of a Marvel movie.
Yeah,
it reminds me of an MCU
movie. It does a great job of hitting all the marks.
Yeah.
Like, it's no wonder that this is stood up. My wife still loves this. Liz and I watched this together. And she's like, I loved it as a kid. I saw it a million times then, and I still love it now.
And it's believable. I'm sorry. I tell you right now, not believable in the sense that, like, it looks real, but the saying, like, that doesn't distract you. The practical effects doesn't nearly distract you as you think it would. The way the mouths move and all that stuff is not, like, obviously, you're watching a fiction movie, but you're not, I don't know. I just, something about it just, and maybe that's because it is nostalgic and novelty to me nowadays. But like,
I'll tell you what, I will watch these Turtles all day, every day over watching Jar Jar Binks.
You have every moment you can possibly think of if you have Jar Jar Binks.
Really hate Jar Jar Binks.
I'd say that the freaking Michael Bay films are worse too. So like,
oh god, yes, yeah. The Michael Bay films are way worse. Yes,
everything
about the Michael Bay films are terrible.
Who plays April O'Neil in Megan Foster? No,
Megan Fox.
Megan Fox.
Yep.
I didn't write the note down.
Not April. She's not April at all.
No, but I didn't write the note down. But there was a comment they made in this movie saying they called April O'Neil a fox.
A fox, yeah. Mikey called her a fox.
And I laughed so hard because I'm just like, oh my god, foreshadowing to the fact like they had like your interview doing rehearsals, but casting for the movie. They're like, well, actually, that would make sense because they did call April O'Neil Fox in the first movie, so maybe we put someone in the role in the newer movies as someone named Megan Fox. I just thought it was kind of funny. We wouldn't have actually recognized it in 1990, but now it makes sense.
Yeah, I love the Turtles. Like, all have a crush on April in it. Yeah,
I'd still pick this April O'Neil, Judith Hoag over Megan Fox. I'm sorry, people have this like drooling 100%. For Megan Fox, but Judith Hoag in 1990 was way.
Judith Hoag looks a fair amount of what April sort of looks like in the comics and sort of looks like on the cartoon series, and like, yeah, the casting was good, and she's like cool. She's fierce. She gives April, like, she doesn't put up any crap from Casey. She like is right there with the Turtles in the mix of it all. And she's not afraid to go climb the sewer. She stands up to the foot. She tries to fight him off.
She seems like a really good reporter in that sense too, where she doesn't back down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The like, her boss sort of wants her to cool it. The police or whatever, and she's just gonna report what she finds and is trying to bring the truth to light. And then she protects the Turtles, like she does in the cartoon series and everything.
And she's Judith Hoag in this movie is relatively unknown before she gets this role. Like, she was on like a TV show called Loving in 1986 to 88 for like 11 episodes, and she was on a couple single episodes here and there, a movie called Matter Degrees. But then TMNT, it was like this, and then she was in Cadillac Man with what's his name? He passed away. Robin Williams, as well as Tim Robbins. But yeah, so she was relatively unknown, which I like. That's my big thing. It's like, it's same with Elias. You have these characters, these main characters you see all the time, and sometimes it can distract of them being, if Chris Evans becomes something else, now you're like, well, that's just Captain America.
Yeah,
and so like they're having someone new in it, and now you're known for that role. And for this day, I mean, she's coming to the Bangor Comic and Toy Con here in Maine as Judith Hoag from TMNT, or as April O'Neil from TMNT. And so like that's like 35 years later. She's still being known as that character, and it sucks because the way these movies work too, if it was made nowadays, we likely would have gotten a movie too with Casey Jones and April O'Neil in it, and so on and so forth. They
I'll
probably
tell you
would
what,
have
if
done
they
it,
had
but-
made like at the time of releasing the second movie or in between the first and the second, they made a Casey Jones movie,
Mhm.
I would have been right
Oh, yeah.
there to watch it.
that would have been this movie number 1, that movie number 2.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
to be
heck
honest
yeah.
with you, I don't know, is he still alive? They should bring him back and have him play a cameo in doing a Casey Jones movie. Would be
I was gonna
hilarious.
look into that, like, because
He's 63 now.
he's so phenomenal as Casey, but like, what else did he do? I don't remember him being in other stuff.
He was in Casey. Oh, he was in TMNT 3, obviously.
Yeah.
Look Who's Talking. He was in Look Who's Talking. Same year.
I watched that as a kid. Yeah.
Cyborg 2, Exotica, The Prophecy. He was in a movie called Crash in 1996. No, as in Apt Pupil, which as people from Maine would know, it's a Stephen King adaptation. Thin Red Line. No. He was in Zodiac, the movie that came out in 2007 about the Zodiac killers, which I liked.
Okay.
I liked that movie a lot. He was in Shooter with Mark Wahlberg in 2007. So
Oh, no
he's
kidding.
done stuff. The last movie he
He's
was
done stuff.
in, so let's see, he did a movie in 2023 called Janet Planet, but it doesn't seem like there's anything. I was trying to think of anything. It's like 2010, 2011. He was in Shutter Island.
It's funny
But
'cause these are definitely things I've heard of, but stuff I've never seen. So
Well, that's also the other part about it is like he didn't have the long hair like Casey Jones in these new movies. If you go to Wikipedia and look at his picture, he looks like an average actor that you'd see in things. And
right,
so,
could just
like,
be on a show
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah. You would see him and you'd be like, oh yeah, cool. And then afterwards, like, oh my God, that was Casey. Oh my God, I didn't realize that. And so like it's not like he's recognizable in that sense because his hair and then the mask and stuff like that too.
He's so good with the hockey mask, and I mean that opening, the first time you see Casey in the movie where he's taking on the purse snatchers, and then fighting Raph, like, and their banter back and forth.
It's phenomenal.
As a child, I was a big Jose Canseco fan, so Raph with the bat.
And then he does the cricket thing, and he's like, "Oh, see, that's 6 points right there." And I'm like, still to this day, no one gets that reference because no one knows the cricket.
Knows what cricket is, yeah. You gotta know what a crumpet is. Know what cricket.
But yeah, I wrote down the fight scenes. And one of the things I'll point out too is that the practical effects are amazing, and the fight scenes that are in the practical effects in this one, and I'll just lump in like the opening scene in number 2, where they fight in the mall area.
Oh yeah, the big mall with the guys robbing it.
That although the action scenes in those things are phenomenal, and I think that with the suits on and then having the actors in them and trying to do all these things with this stuff is crazy. But I would give her credit also for is the very first scene with in this movie, how it goes to black. You know, like when the first action fight scene, I should say, it just goes to black and you hear,
you don't see the turtles,
and then they're wrapped up, and I'm like, I love that sort of filming. That's a lower budget. That's a quicker option to do. It's all you have to do is sound effects and things afterwards, and you get the point. Like you didn't have to show them.
Well, I feel like too, it's great to build that that hype that you can't wait to see the turtles.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't always see them fight because instead it starts with April and it starts with the fight. And all you see is Raph looking through the sewer as she finds the Sai, and you don't actually see him yet. And you're just waiting. You're waiting for that big moment. Like that is just smart. That's great.
Yeah,
it's like it'd be the same way with like the Hulk. One of the best Hulk books I ever read. It doesn't even have the Hulk in it.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time you're just waiting for the Hulk. You know something's gonna set him off. You're just waiting for that moment where Bruce snaps. It's like you just
because I guess that would have had to
have the turtles beat somebody up.
Because you don't actually see them for a little bit longer after that. So maybe it added that 10 minutes to the first part of the movie where you don't actually see the full turtles because of that. But if they actually showed them beating everybody up, it would only be 3 or 4 or 5 minutes into the movie. And so it'd be quicker that you actually see the turtles. So yeah, it makes sense in that sense too. But it also gets the point done. It's the same thing when you see someone in a movie and they go around and they come back and someone's been killed or something like that, but you hear the sound effects. It's like, cool. It's a way easier just to set up the death than it is to actually show the death.
Have to show
and
it.
So the same thing. This was like twofold. They were able to build anticipation to seeing the turtles, but also get the point across and not have to pay to actually show the scene and film. And maybe they did film the scene and they were like, this does not look good. They just cut it out and said, let's just go to black. I don't know. It's a possibility. We don't see any of that afterwards, but and then the music starts. Like, dude, this movie is almost one of the best soundtracks in any, and it fits so perfectly with the turtles. Like, it's just like, and that's why the records sell so well too. I mean, we know this, but they didn't focus on the music in this movie like they did in 2, where they actually have like Vanilla Ice and all that stuff. Because I feel like people love the movie's music so much in the first movie that I feel like they were almost forced to do what they did. In the
Right.
second one, it's like in the second one, it was almost like the comparison to Marvel movies, like what Guardians does to music, is kind of
Yeah.
like what they did in the second one with the music. And this movie was just like, I don't know, just the music in the background was just adding so much to the fun of the movie, the
Yep.
upbeatness of the movie, everything
Yep.
about it was just
Music
uh,
playing there right in that right at that end of that
yeah.
opening scene, and they start going through the sewers there, and they're high fiving and having fun, and yeah,
I feel like
it's
that if your
spot on.
neighbor was watching it and you live in an apartment and you hear that music, you're like, I know what they're watching.
Right.
Like that's like you didn't even hear two notes and you're like, oh, I know what that is. That's the TMNT movie from 1990. Let's go over there and bring some beer over and see if we can watch it with them.
It's funny how the
Some
soundtracks back then
dominoes.
were just so like so spot on and so
Yes,
relevant. I feel like it's almost hard to like replicate that nowadays.
it is.
Like,
Well, one of the reasons is because they don't like it's so much money involved, so much like not money
yeah,
paying for things, but so much more trying to make money off of it. So like
right.
the Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack was phenomenal too, but they're like, okay, it's Kendrick Lamar wrote a song for it, and then they released an album, and they're trying to make that extra funds.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're the balance between the producer trying to make the movie and the people trying to make the soundtrack are like, oh, where can we make the most money instead of just like, does it fit the soundtrack? Does it fit the movie? And I think that's something James Gunn did amazingly in Guardians 1, which was he just picked songs that worked well with it and got the approval to pay for those songs. And then the
Yep.
soundtrack sold because of the movie. And I think that's one of those big things in Guardians for music related people, which was
Yep.
a lot of fun. And that's what
Which
Taylor
was
loves,
really
that
easy
soundtrack.
with Star-Lord having his
Yep.
obsession with that
Music.
one tape, so
Yep.
you could have that, and it was well picked songs for each scene
Music
in
by John
Guardians.
Duperez. John Duperez, who's 77 now. Actually, they should get him at Comic-Con.
Heck yeah.
He was born Trevor Jones. His name now is John Du Perez. I don't want to look up why, but
Interesting.
he didn't do much.
That's
He did
crazy.
this.
Boy, he had one job and he did it right.
Okay, so I guess he did arranging the music for Monty Python stuff.
Okay.
Because he's from England. That makes sense. He also there's this movie called The Wild. Did you ever see it? It came out. It's a Disney movie with like a lion, and it's like a ripoff of Madagascar in a sense. Where a
Oh,
lion,
I think I might have. No, you say
it
that.
stars the voices of Keith Sutherland, Jim Belushi, Eddie Izzard, William Shatner. Music was by Alan Silvestri, but it was contributed to the music was this guy, John
Interesting.
DePerez. But the director of that movie was the reason I mentioned that is Steve Williams, Spaz, who was the visual artist for Jurassic Park, and that's why like it's just kind of
Oh,
funny
wow.
that there's
The connections.
it's just that movie was awful, and but this guy contributed to that. So yeah, props to John Perez or Trevor Jones or whoever it was when this movie came out, because this music is like. I have the record. I have the vinyl of both
That's
this one
awesome.
and number two, because they're
We
just
sold
phenomenal.
the vinyl in the store.
know,
We had
signed.
copies. Yeah. Signed,
And
autographed.
sketched.
Yep.
The other talk about the opening scenes in the beginning of the movie when they order the Domino's pizza, and
Yeah.
the
Oh my
Domino's
God.
driver comes and he just willingly sticks the pizza down into the drain and
It's
takes
New
the
York.
money
You don't
out.
question this stuff.
And like
Where
he's
the
like
hell's 122 and an eighth? You're
well,
standing
that's the
on
other
it,
part is
dude.
like nowadays you wouldn't be able to do that because you order online and it would be like that address doesn't exist. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And you're like, who's like 42 and an eighth? Who was like, oh, that's right. That seems legit. I'm gonna go deliver
Sure.
this pizza. And the fact that I also thought one pizza for $13 in 1990. That seems expensive.
That does seem pricey.
I feel like it's $8
I mean,
for
they
a
had
pizza
all
at
the
Domino's right
toppings
now.
beside anchovies, right?
Yeah, you're right.
No
You're right. You're right.
anchovies.
Yeah, yeah. I just feel like it's like $8 whenever I go to like book club and I bring a Domino's pizza. I feel like I pay $7.99, and I'm like that. I mean, I did pick it up.
It
So there's no
actually costs
delivery charge.
more then.
Yeah.
Yeah, delivery charge. And I mean, New York, maybe
Oh, New
pizza's more,
York. Yeah.
you know?
Yep. That makes sense.
Yep,
But I
the
just love
regional
that.
pricing.
I'm like, the guy just delivers it willy nilly. But smarts for the production company to get them to get Domino's to do a product placement there, because I feel like Domino's probably killed it.
Yeah, well, so it's funny. We were so we had our Ninja Turtle release comic here,
Yeah.
and we had our big midnight release party that was sponsored by IDW, and we got Pizza Hut gift cards. And I said to my wife, I'm surprised it's not Domino's. They're nationally done.
Yeah.
Plus, they were the first
Yeah.
in the first movie. And my wife's like, no, they weren't. That was Pizza Hut that delivered it. I'm like, no, that was Domino's. We had this argument. And she's like, well, Domino's wasn't that big back then. I'm like, they were marketing big. You had remember the little red Noid guy?
Yep.
You had Beat the Noid, whatever, and the clock stuff. So like Domino's was big on that. I as a kid, I don't think I liked their pizza at all. It's gotten much better.
Yes.
Over
Well, to me,
time.
yeah, I mean, we'll go on a full pizza discussion at some point, but like, yes, that you're right. And the thing about Bangor Comic and Toy Con, I keep mentioning this, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this now too. Is our buddies are running this convention in Bangor, and I could list off. There's Brian Tochi, Ernie Reyes Jr., Robbie Rist, Ken Scott, Judith Hoag, as well as Francis Chow, and are all coming from various TMNT movies. Are coming to Bangor, Maine to do this thing. It's really cool for Turtle
Pretty
fans.
awesome.
Plus our buddies Joe Schmalke, who's done variant covers for the Turtles, and our buddy Bob Takic, who has also done Turtle stuff, are going to be at this convention, signing autographs, taking pictures, all that stuff. But they were looking for a pizza company to do some sort of pizza thing for something, and they were put it out on Facebook, like, hey, does anybody know anybody, and so on and so forth. Personally, I was like, it should probably be a local person. It'd be really cool if like a local like Angelo's or someone was like, oh, we'll
Local pizza place.
But then I'm like, you should have reached out to this pizza, the Domino's chain, because like the Domino's pizza like would have been great, and having that as the actual thing, and having Domino's pizza boxes to be like in this thing, it makes so much sense.
It's funny because they haven't really changed. They did a good job of keeping that original brand idea. Yeah. So like the box and everything basically looks the same in 1990.
And colors, the white box
with the
blue and the red on it and all that stuff. Yeah, it would have been
the guy wearing the shirt. Yep.
Yeah. So that would have been funny to say that there, but yeah.
That perfect marketing spot right there. It's funny that it was Domino's too, and it's not a company that doesn't exist now or something, or if it only been like a place, it was only in New York or whatever,
or a made up company, because I mean,
just a made up company.
Because it wasn't, other than Domino's, there wasn't much like product placement. I think the only one.
Well, you know what's funny? I happened to watch the end credits, which I got to talk to you about that too. But they had on their list of places that had Burger King, and I was like, I don't remember Burger King in the did Burger King just cater it when they were filming or something? Like, I don't remember that being in there anywhere. Maybe it was
in the background near, like somewhere in New York City when they're walking.
That's what I wondered. Or like, was it in like that scene with the because it has all the scenes in the warehouse with the teenagers doing all this stuff, which was another one Liz and I talked about with like, God, can you imagine now you got the first scene in that warehouse is kids smoking a big cigar, and he looks like he's like 12. Like, can you imagine?
Well, they ask like,
they got cigarettes, or
like, you need cigarettes, or you want regular or menthol? Regular or menthol, and it's like, okay, that was just so like nowadays you can't even show someone having cigarettes on screen.
Yeah. Oh my God, you got all of these teenage kids doing all this stuff. Like, people would lose their mind.
That's pretty funny. That's amazing. I love you brought that up. Yeah, but yeah, it's weird how it's not a fake company. But yeah, I guess it wasn't that big of a movie, and people were obviously $13 million put into it, but I'm guessing that helped with it, because I'm guessing Domino's didn't not pay to have their name and their car and their uniform and all that stuff in it. Like,
I don't know. I bet they did with the popularity of Ninja Turtles. I bet there was like a
bit of
bidding war for that. Yeah.
It makes the most sense, and I think that they probably were like, yeah, we have the budget for it, and let's do it and make it happen.
And that was what I was telling Liz, that back then they were like, Domino's was really big on their marketing campaign. That was what they put all their money into. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that they coughed up the cash so that way they could be the pizza delivery place.
I don't know. It was cool. And the pizza part of it was necessary, I think. Obviously if you could have, it made such a big point, and I'm hoping they didn't put the pizza part in this thing because they're like, oh, we got Domino's. The Domino's wants to do it. Let's put pizza in this movie. I hope that's not how it was decided to put pizza in this movie. But I do think it had such a plot line to the thing, eating pizza in April's apartment. When they go to, oh, there's pizza left over. And it's like, oh, do you want it with penicillin? It's got mold obviously on it and stuff like that. Like those kind of things would be, it just added so much to the story. I think it added comedy to it, because there's a lot of comedy revolves around the pizza. When they're throwing the pizza slices around, and one hits Splinter in the head, and that kind of stuff is all funny to me. And the pizza delivery joke. So pizza had a big part in this movie. Like, this is not like, this is like pizza related. This is Turtles and pizza.
Turtles, and I think it's just really smart to be relatable.
Yeah.
To every little kid that can be, that's my favorite Ninja Turtle, and they like pizza, and I like pizza, and it's perfect thing. If they were all eating sushi, like,
maybe the sushi market would be completely different nowadays. I feel like we live in an alternate universe. That's what we need. We need like an alternate universe version of this, where they eat like sushi or like something like that. And also salad. You and I are talking on this, in the morning, eating sushi, because it's now just part of life in the United States. But
it's a regular culture.
Oh, I find it, before I forget, it was the ninth highest grossing film in 1990. Okay.
I'm surprised it's not higher than that.
Well, Ghost was number one with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. This is actually the last time we are in the same year.
That must have been the like romantic couple movie thing, and everybody and their brother was going to see it or something. It's like, how the hell Ghost?
It's big.
Turtles?
It was $505 million, and Home Alone was behind that with $476 million.
Okay. Yeah, well, Home Alone, that's some stiff competition.
But here you go, Paul. Here's a little fun fact for everybody. This is the same year. So we're living in the year, and we just talked about Deadpool Wolverine a couple seconds ago about how I would have gone in theaters if I didn't get COVID.
Yeah.
It's the same time, this 1990, that when this movie came out, that the number one box office movie for the opening weekends featured a husband, and the second box office, the figurative wife, this year. So like Ryan Reynolds and what's her face?
Blake Lively.
Blake Lively had the number one movie in the box office opening weekend, which was It Ends With Us and Deadpool Wolverine. Okay, so those two movies. In 1990 was the same thing, which was with Ghost with Demi Moore and Die Hard 2 with Bruce Willis. Those were husband and wife. So it's kind of funny how this is the year.
I saw that in theaters as well that year.
So Die Hard 2 was the 7th largest with 240 million. Back to the Future Part 3 was number 6. Total Recall, Dancing with Wolves, Pretty Woman, Home Alone, Ghost. So
all the movies, look at that movie list.
From 7 to 1 makes sense to me in a sense. Ghost is a very popular movie, but like Home Alone, Pretty Women, Dances with Wolves, Total Recall, Back to the Future Part 3, Die Hard 2. Presumed Innocence beat it by $20 million with Harrison Ford.
I've never even heard of that movie.
Me either. It has Harrison Ford in it, but I've never heard of the movie. Guess what number 10 is? 1990. Dick Tracy.
Oh, come on. Man,
$40 million less, but like still, it's still number 10. So yeah, top 10 highest grossing
top
movie.
10
For the first release of it. And it's also, we didn't talk about this at all, but we're obviously pretty far into this. This is 6 years after the comic book was released.
Yeah.
So you're talking 6 years, a feature film, major motion picture film is being released.
It's crazy how fast.
6 years after it came out.
How fast it all snowballed. Like, did you ever watch The Toys That Made Us?
I did, yes. Yeah,
and the guy that like basically was trying to become this agent or whatever, and being at a Comic-Con and seeing the Ninja Turtles and going, hey, I bet I can do something with this, and like going around pitching the idea of toys, and then the toy happens to catch, right? Like, who was it, Kenner or Mattel or whoever?
Playmates.
Playmates, there you go. Playmates. It was like, all right, we'll make these Ninja Turtle toys. We need, something for property. And then it to make it catch on with our generation, well, that means it needs a cartoon. And then comes, all right, it has a comic book, but we got to have a comic book for these kids to know what's going on with them. Not this, more dark, adult, gritty one. And then look, in 6 years' time, it goes from that to being the top 10 movie of the year.
Yeah.
And this worldwide phenomenon. I mean, over in the background over here, you can't see, there is a vintage 1990 Mirage Ninja Turtles t-shirt, children's shirt that I have hanging on the wall because I found it in the collection. And whoever this kid had this wore this thing right out.
Yeah.
And I just love it. I'm like, this got to go up on our wall. I can't just like throw this out.
Yeah, I can't throw it out or sell it because it's so cool to have a piece of memorabilia like that. And so this came out. So the first comic was released mid 84. Let's see, there you go.
Original 1990s Ninja Turtle water bottle.
The French picture book.
This is 88. This is 1988.
The French picture book? No.
Yeah. It was, I mean, look at it. Look, it was just like, it went from
worldwide.
It went from being an obscure comic in rural-based New England. It was like Maine and New Hampshire were the only places it was. There was only 250 copies of the first Turtle book printed before they did the reprint. And then in 6 years' time, to grow to being that size.
Well, I mentioned the movie because we're talking about the movie, but it was 1987 when Playmates made the deal to do it. So 3 years after the comic book was released, they had a toy deal. And in 4 years from that, so 87, 88, 9, by the time this hit, it was a $1.1 billion line of toys.
Crazy.
And then
the original Ninja Turtle lineup only had 10 action figures.
Mm-hmm. And then you add this movie
the originals
into
10
it.
backs, the 10 turtles and 10 turtle figures, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. And so it was insane how much. And then by 2000 they sold to Nickelodeon, and now it's come full circle a little bit. Obviously, we're not going to get into the whole Eastman and Laird thing, selling the company and all that stuff, and all that stuff. But it's full circle really with like Last Ronin having a be a Eastman and Laird story
Oh
that
my
now
God,
is
how big
becoming
the last Ronin is
phenomenal.
now.
But also that Kevin's now involved way more again in the comics, where he was like the back in the day wanted to do the most. He wanted to be the comic book stuff, and
Yep.
so he's writing a lot of comics, doing variant covers and doing covers and so on and so forth. So it's really cool to see that come back, kind of full circle in that sense. Not in the same way. It would have been nice if Kevin was all along doing this. But you know what? I tell you the same thing. If it was me and I had the opportunity to cash in some money, I would have probably sold it too. So I don't have, and like it's just I'm just saying. And
Yeah,
guess
and
what?
I think
He still
I
gets to
think
play
they
the
made
Turtles.
enough to cover their expenses for a little bit.
I think
Yeah.
he still gets to play in the Turtle sandbox, and he made all that money. So like I guess it's whatever.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I say anything with my company. If my owners are like, "Oh, we're gonna sell," I'm never gonna be like, "Well, why?" I'm like,
Yeah.
obviously, because it's a business and you want to make a bunch of money, and so on. And so he's to have IDW be like, "Yeah, sure, come on back and do some turtle stuff," and so on and so forth is really badass. And now with the release of Last Ronin over the past couple of years, has grown that gritty, dark, original style comic book right back up to where it's supposed to be over at IDW, which is phenomenal. But this had that mix. It had that grittiness, it had that comedy, it had action sequences that were beautifully choreographed and fought in those suits. There was an homage in a sense. I don't know if it was planned, but with April being an artist and drawing the turtles and
Yeah,
having that
was interesting, right?
is it like an homage? To me, it was like that's kind of a cool way to say this has started off as an illustration, now as a feature film.
Telling
And
the
I don't know.
story of it, her telling the story of what's going on the farm of each one of them, and
So I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but I loved it. I'll take it as it was on purpose or not, like to tell the written tale and the illustrated tale of the turtles and try to throw it back to the original source material, which was a comic book, and do it that way. And they did the cool transitions where she draw the turtle and then it would fade out and the turtle would be sitting behind.
Yeah,
the
like
drawing.
Donnie driving the truck there
Yeah.
and arguing with Casey Jones.
It's awesome. So I think those kind of things, that was a cool thing. I said it could not have been anything connected with it, just part of the script they were writing. But I thought, in my opinion, and I'll take it that way, that it is a homage, a hat tip to the original source material of being a comic book.
Yeah. Yep, I can see that. And
go ahead.
All right, so here's my one, and now we're debating on this actually happened or not. All right, so I was watching this on Paramount Plus streaming.
Okay.
For this podcast, and the end credits come up, and it says, "Do you want to, watch end credits or this next movie starting?" Yeah. So I want to watch end credits, and I remember a scene where after the whole movie, you see the Shredder's hand like in the dump, like in the trash. That exists, right? Because it's not on the Paramount Plus.
It's in the beginning of the second. Is it the beginning of the second movie where it's like a
That's
flashback
not the
to
end
what
of the
happened?
First. There's no end credit where the Shredder comes back.
No.
Oh, weird. All right.
I think I thought it was the beginning of the second one. Now I'm gonna have to go watch the second one. I could have sworn it was like maybe you're right. I don't know. But that didn't happen before the credits.
I seem to thought that that was because you're like, well, the Shredder's dead.
That's at the end of that's the end of 2, isn't it?
No, because the end of 2 he's dead because he's in the water and the things collapse and he's.
Yeah, but doesn't he move his hand in the collapse in the water though, like in the rubble?
And then it just drops, like he's dead. Like that's.
Okay, maybe that's what it is.
But I thought at the end of the first movie to show that the Shredder wasn't gone.
They didn't do post-credit scenes in 1990.
It showed like you were looking at New York from the outside, sort of, like Manhattan's in the background or whatever, and the hand comes up out of the trash. But maybe that's the second movie, and it's that Liz and I both thought it was there.
No, yeah.
What do they call it? Mandela effect, where you.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're thinking of it being. In
this case, it did happen. It's just not where I thought it was.
Because it does happen in when the not deck, but the barge or whatever it's called, the wood collapses, and he does a little bit.
And that might be the start, like you said, the start of the second movie showing him coming back. Might be that.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but it's one of those things that you don't know. Now I feel like I should watch the other one, but I also didn't watch the other one on purpose. Number 2, I probably would watch the other 2. I didn't want to get him confused in that sense too. But now we would have known, would have been an answer in that sense too, if it was actually in that. But yeah, I tell you what, one of the best things about this movie, and you'll agree, is they're trying to say the saying "cowabunga" towards the end of the movie when he's like, "Oh, I've always been partial to cowabunga." What do they say right before that? Totally tubular.
Yes. That's right.
So we have a beer at Orono Brewing Company, if anybody doesn't know, where I work during the day, and that is Totally Tubular, and it's one of Paul's favorite beers
That
that
is
we
one of my
make.
favorite beers.
So Totally Tubular is a tat tip to this
Yeah, I
thing, but
think
also
Mikey yells
surfing,
it out,
and
doesn't he?
yeah.
Yep.
And so he's like totally tubular and so on and so forth. So that's where the tubular, totally tubular, all that stuff came from, but also like surfing and all that stuff. But like it definitely is a reference to the '90s in this the way that people spoke. But yeah, cowabunga became a synonymous word with the Turtles right after this
Oh
movie as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, it's a fight. So here's the deal, Paul. It's a phenomenal movie for the 1990s and for the movie that it's just as good of a movie as I always remember it. Every time I watch it, I'm never disappointed. I can watch it over and over and over again because it's super entertaining. I think the story is actually great with the trying to get kids to steal shit and have almost a cult. It actually really is.
It is weird. Like at one plot hole in this, I guess it must be like for funding the foot or something. Like, what the hell are they doing with all this crap? Like, why are they stealing all this shit?
They don't show that, and I think it's on purpose. It's not necessary. I think we understand that they're probably
they're
selling
bad.
on
They're
the black.
stealing.
It's New York City, so they probably have a selling it on the black market or over at
right. Because you see them like packaging or unpackaging goods and stuff, and it's just like, what are you doing with all this? Wait, why is this ancient like ninja clan want with a bunch of crap? Like,
is it like when you have someone do something initiation for them, like steal it, so we know you're worth it, so you actually are badass.
So we know you're willing to do this.
But they don't actually need it.
Maybe this is how eBay actually started. They had all these goods, and they were like, "All right, now we got to find a way to sell this crap off. What are we gonna do with it?"
Wasn't that the beginning of Fast and the Furious too, man? Aren't they stealing? Like they're like hijacking trucks and stealing electronics out of the back of that. So maybe it's just
that's just what you do. You're like, you know what? I want to start a multi-level villain like club.
Yeah.
Let's start by stealing some electronic goods.
Now I want the people
from there. It will turn into an empire. Eventually, we'll be like all the other, like the Foot Clan. Maybe Cobra does that with G.I. Joe. Like it all started off with Cobra Commander like ripping out car stereos. And the guy started all coming with him. Like, all right, I'm down with this.
Nice. Now I just want to hear the people from the Fast and the Furious be like, oh, we got the idea of ripping off electronics from TMNT 1990. That's what I want to hear. Now I love the scene
where like, oh, some New Yorkers have things stolen and they don't even know it's gone or whatever. And the woman like turns and she looks back and the TV stolen. The TV looked like a piece of crap.
Yes,
like, he's got a sticker stuck on it. It looks like.
Well, I think that's a great opening scene.
How much you gonna get for that exactly? You gonna pawn that for like a couple bucks? Like, what are you doing with this?
Well, that's the comedy in it. It was hilarious. It was almost like a cartoon where they would be like whoosh, and you'd see like a puff of smoke come up where there was someone who running away, and that was funny to me. But it does make no sense. There is a plot hole in the idea of like, well, are they selling it or are they just stealing it to steal it to prove a point?
Why are you doing this?
It's possible that it literally is an initiation to the whole thing where you're just like, okay, are you badass enough to steal someone's TV off their deck? First of all, I want to sit on a
cartoon series. They're stealing a lot of technology because they need that stuff because they're, thanks to
maybe this is just that
Krang, they can turn it into things.
Maybe that's their homage to it.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, like
or maybe they're planning to tell more stories in the future with it and being like, this is what, so in movie one, this would happen, and then just things changed or whatever.
It was just sort of funny. Like you go through this, and that was like one of the only like glaring plot questions of like, why are they stealing all this crap? What are they doing?
Well, I also think, like I said, it's possible that it was for the future, and they change things as movies progress and things and so on. That we watched. I wanted to put something random on the other night, and I put a random episode of Seinfeld on, and then I was like, oh, I really want to watch Seinfeld again, so I put on episode 1. And in episode 1, Jerry talks to Kramer, and Kramer has never left the apartment in 4 years.
Yeah,
but that's the only time it's ever. Like, by the time they get to episode 2, he's no different.
Been watching Seinfeld, and the same thing. There's a lot of references to siblings. Jerry's sibling, George's sibling. There's no siblings.
No. And it's like they don't care. There's certain things that they just don't care about.
Yeah, going on those first few seasons, there's like all kinds of these things. I'm like, what? Yeah, Kramer never leaves the apartment. I'm like, well, Kramer's always out doing weird crap.
So like the second episode, they're like, no, he leaves it all the time. And Elaine's not in the pilot at all. It's just Kramer, Jerry, and George in the first one, and they added her afterwards. But yeah, Paul, the biggest. Okay, so it's a great movie. I love this movie. Yep. Why? And this before we're gonna do our rating here in a second and close up here. We're at about the hour mark here. Why did the second movie flop so bad in the theaters? So this is 1990. Ooze came out in 1991. Okay.
Yeah.
This is $200 million they made in the box office. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people, millions of people went to see this movie. They loved it. It wasn't love it. If you look at the critic or fan ratings of this movie are high. Critic rating was 42%. But for 42% for a comic book movie based on turtles,
a
not
movie
that bad.
that was more or less geared towards children.
And you think we're the ones that are going to go see it, whether the movie's good or not.
Kids. Yeah.
There's nothing else on the theaters that are like it. So like if it's me and I'm a Turtles fan growing up, I'm going to go see this friggin' movie. It's the same thing with like a DC. All your DC fans are still flocking to see crappy DC movies. The current MCU is not nearly what it was in 2008, and people are still flocking to the theaters to go see these movies. So we would have gone. The second movie was made for $25 million and made $78 million in the theater.
Wow. Huge tank.
Like, how does that like happen? Like, I just don't understand.
I don't know. I wonder if the Turtles craze had just started to curb. Like, it just started like the, like if my generation was just getting old enough that we weren't as hopped up on Turtles as we were.
Yeah.
I can tell you that the second movie I still enjoy, but Toka and Razor are terrible.
Yes, they're awful. Yeah.
That's a whole bad. They don't age well. They weren't good then, I don't think.
No, and that's a whole rights thing too. What people don't understand about the early Marvel Cinematic Universe and not having Spider-Man and all that stuff. It's the same thing with that back then because they wanted to do Bebop and Rocksteady, but they actually couldn't do Bebop and Rocksteady for some sort of licensing deal that they weren't allowed to do Bebop and Rocksteady.
So because everybody was waiting, like in that scene where they have the animals and
you're like, oh, Bebop and Rocksteady, it's gonna be amazing.
You're waiting to see Bebop and Rocksteady. Instead, you get this, and the idea they're like they're babies and they get Shredder's their father.
So it's definitely worse. And then number 3 made $54 million. So $21 million for $54 million. So the second two movies did not make nearly as much as the first movie did. Combined, they didn't make as much as the first movie. And they were made for 3 times as much because the total of the second two movies was about $46 million and the first was $13 million. So 3 times as much more money in the two combined.
I think overall, the big thing was we'd started aging as Turtle fans, and we saw it. Like we had it on the big screen. So now the like, oh man, Turtles on the big screen, everybody's got to see it. Had ended. We all saw it. So like that second one, I saw the second one in theaters. I never saw the third one in theaters, and as I said, I still haven't even finished watching the third one.
It was literally almost a year later. It was March 22nd, 1991. The second one came out, and I'm thinking to myself, like, all of us would have still been in the craze, and it's not as simple as being able to stream it. It would have been like. You'd had to own it on VHS at that point, and you would have had to go through the theaters. So I was just baffled.
On Turtles.
It just baffles me that it didn't make nearly as much money, in that. I don't know. It's just weird. I mean, the second one was a 6.0 on IMDb, which obviously back then didn't exist, but
excuse me.
36% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that's like, it wasn't like it was that far of a different of a movie for most people at that time.
It's funny. I don't think I would give the second one that high of a rating personally.
Yeah. But I'm trying to, I'm just trying to think of that. I'm like, it just baffles me that it was that much different. And that's why they probably put the extra $10 million into the movie. They're like, well, we're going to make this back no problem because we did it with the other one. And now they
the first one we crotched. So why would we not?
And, I don't know. And Turtles in Time was a big video game and stuff like that. So maybe the whole time travel thing. And number 3, people were like, oh, they'll go into that. Which it just wasn't nearly as good. But now we're going to get the last Ronin movie at some point, which would be cool because it would probably bring back some of that stuff and hopefully use some practical effects. I know they're going to use CGI in it. It's just more cost effective. It's cleaner. But I hope they use CGI on top of practical effects. So I hope it's like that they're wearing like body suits.
The new Ghostbuster movies, they do a good job of like combining and mixing.
Well, if you do like a body suit that has the thing on it and then you overlay CGI on top of it to make it look like the Turtles, and like maybe they're not wearing masks, but they're wearing or helmets, but they're actually going to put the helmets on in CGI and the mouth, so the mouth moves a little cleaner and stuff like that. Like they do a mixture of the two, I'll be happy. If some of the big fat fight scenes are 100% CGI, but some of them just walking around eating pizza is more practical effects. Like if they can blend the two of them, I'd be happy with that in the future. But so this movie is not amazing, and I do think, but it is. But I do think it's hard to say that all of our movies are on the same scale. So this is not us as a professional reviewers here being like, oh, we can't
I am most definitely not a professional anything.
We can't give professional asshole.
I do that well.
You can't give a score of like a 3 to something and expect it to be the same 3 on everything. I think it's hard to do that because there is other factors. When you review new movies that came out just now, yes, you can review it. There's no nostalgic part of it. There's no
Yeah.
that there's just what's
And I mean,
happening then.
we've had like this, we've had Dick Tracy, and then we've had like the godforsaken Captain America movie. Like,
Yes.
there's the blend of what we've watched is still a little off.
And so it's hard. So I'm trying to think. I was thinking on it. I'm like, oh, to me, like nostalgic reasons, and the movie and all that stuff is a 5 stars, 5 out of 5 stars. Like, this is great. Yep. It's not. I can't give it 5 out of 5 because 5 out of 5 is an almost nearly perfect movie, and this is not a nearly perfect movie. However,
I feel like Splinter was. I thought Splinter looked weird when I was a kid, and I don't think he looks any better now.
Yes,
like he looks like a puppet.
Yes,
Splinter definitely looks like a puppet.
So there is faults to this movie, and by big, and it's obviously a 42% critic rating is not insanely wrong.
Right.
I do think that this is better than Dick Tracy. I do love Dick Tracy a lot, and I do think that it came out in the same year and so on and so forth. If you compare those two, but not by much. I think they're following. So, and here's mine. I'll give you mine first. It's I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I gave Dick Tracy 3.5. So I think this like I said, that has a slight edge to me, and probably because it's Turtles versus Dick Tracy. I think there's the Casey Jones,
so
the
I think
Judith
I think that's the hard part, right? Like I don't have an actual sentimental attachment to Dick Tracy, with the exception of that movie.
Yes.
Watched that movie when I was a kid. Like I didn't have Dick Tracy shirts and Dick Tracy book bags and Dick Tracy pencils, and like I had Ninja Turtle everything. Like I had, I saved up my money to buy Ninja Turtle #1 comic for like $20 back in the 80s, and $20 back then was or 1990, whenever it was. That was a huge investment especially as a kid. I think that nostalgia has like a lot of it. Like it gives us a little bit of a blinding, but I would still say that I think I would go 4.5 stars on this. I think it's that much fun. It's that good. There's a few practical problems, but overall, I think the practical effects are great. There's some plot holes, but overall, I think that this movie is just enjoyable.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like I feel like what we almost should start doing is like an actual like serious critic rating. Like this is what's going on here, and you probably give it like a 3 or something like that. And then there's like the rewatchability, classicness, all the other elements that go into it. That critic rating on how good a movie is for awards, and critic rating based on who should watch this movie and how many times you should watch this movie, and so on and so forth. A lot of the movies we've watched in the past on this podcast have been like, watch it so you have it and say you've watched it and then move on and never watch it again.
Never watch it again.
This is one of those ones that you should almost every year right around March time when it's the anniversary of this movie coming out, you should just throw it on and watch it.
Put it on.
Your kids should eventually watch it. All those people, it should be studied in comic book world as a great adaptation of original source material, in the sense that it brought in elements of all the source material, the cartoons, the comics, the so on and so forth. And that this is where they learn from that they didn't do correctly in the Michael Bay films and in the animated TMNT movie that came out years ago, and so on. That like don't do what they did in those movies and do what they did in this movie, and so on and so forth. So I think that there has that, you mentioned that the nostalgia part does affect it. And so if we have a 5-star rating on this thing, and I say, well, nostalgic already gets a 2.5. So yes, then you just rate the movie on the other side of it, and now you're right. I'm at 3.5. Okay, 4.5. Okay, cool. Because like you can't give it 5 in my opinion, because it's not perfect. Like
it's not perfect.
But you're right. 4.5 is probably more likely where it should be in that sense of like, it's iconic. It's one of those ones that should win like lifetime achievement awards.
I love this movie. I love it more the more I watch it.
Yep.
I love it. The scenes in it are great. There's like, I don't know, iconic, like the fight scene in April's apartment, and like rafting on the foot, the raft meeting Casey's just phenomenal in it. The humor and the jokes, like they never get old.
No, and they're not bad jokes. They're actually jokes. Like, okay, they're almost dad jokes. Maybe that's why we remember.
Some of them are for sure. Yeah,
we like them so much because they are almost dad jokes, being dads here. But like the kids seeing the turtle underneath under the table, and feet sticking out from underneath something, and the shower curtains and all that stuff. Like that stuff is funny because like they're also are ninjas, right? They're ninjas, so they have this ability to turn around and have them be gone in a second, and so like and all that stuff. That's
but then
all
you
funny.
Still have the idea of Mikey sleeping with a giant stuffed panda bear.
Yes, yeah. So like all that stuff is hilarious, and here's the reason why I think that number 2 would be higher rated than it should, in my opinion, too, is that there's a lot of iconic things that happen in number two. Their new home in the subway, the ooze,
Yep.
Kino, all that stuff.
Yep.
Like just going and talking to TRI, like all that stuff is like, to me, is iconic in the movie part of TMNT lore. And so that's why two is always one of those ones that like I almost wish it was one movie so that I could say that them together is a four. And then don't include. I enjoy the nostalgic and the different part of number three.
And that didn't be my hard part for three. Is I don't have the nostalgia of it. I had moved on from Turtles by then. So
do you think that Back to the Future 3 came out in 1990?
Yeah.
Okay, and that movie was the sixth, seventh highest grossing film of the year, and it was
right.
I loved number three, and in fact, all of them to me are awesome. But do you think that's what the TMNT people were trying to do? They're like, well, they time traveled to the Old West in Back to the Future 3, and it did really well. So maybe if we go to
work out. So I don't know where. Like, I almost wonder if you said the video game was enough inspiration. I don't know where the hell they came up with the time traveling Ninja Turtles for that movie.
Yeah,
I almost think too it might be, as we review bad movies, quote unquote. Maybe we need to watch the Michael Bay one and review it. I saw it once in theater, and I have a passionate. I'm going to say hatred. I'm going to go hatred for that movie. Mm-hmm. But I left the theater angry and disgusted with it. So maybe I need to watch it again and watch it as a review side, that I'm trying to really take it in and not just.
The Turtles themselves are hideous.
They're awful.
They're awful.
They're awful. They look bad. They're enormous, which is one of my arguments is with Ninja Turtles is that they're relatable to kids.
Yes.
And that the comedic side of, if you're this big bad thug in New York City and then you get your butt handed to you by this little short Ninja Turtle, like, how do you explain that to people? How do you tell your friends? Like, you show up at the bar and you're all beat to hell and they're like, what happened to you? And you're like, well, this 4-foot-tall turtle kicked my ass. Versus like the ones in the Bay movies that look like they weigh like 400 pounds and they're like huge.
They could kill people. Like they would literally kill people.
He's bulletproof. But I specifically remember seeing where they're shooting at Raph and the bullets are hitting his shell. Like, what? He crushes a Humvee.
Well, I think it's one of the things about the first one. I mentioned the whole Marvel side of things.
I hate that movie.
The MCU of things, and I've always said that, is like one of the things I love about it is a comment I usually say a lot is that like it's okay in a certain right moment to tell a fart joke at a funeral, because it's not all serious. Like there needs to be laughter, there needs to be a light moment. I'm not saying when they're saying the eulogy you should tell a fart joke, but I'm saying like at the reception or whatever, you can giggle a little bit, joke about the person's life and what they did funny in life and so on and so forth, and laugh.
Have that and the same thing with sharing.
Superhero movies, I'm always like, that's the thing I think about DC films. It's like, oh, you're dark, that joke from Deadpool 2, whereas like, oh, you must be in the DC universe, you're pretty dark, because it's like there's no joking at all. And then they do have too much sometimes, like, there is some too much side of that thing, but that happy medium for the first Iron Man, those first early movies where there were like jokes that were happening, and I think that this has that, but also the softness of the Turtles make it so they're not as menacing. They're just creepy to people who are like, that's a life-size turtle. And I don't think they need to be scary. I think they need to be
the cab driver. He's like, doesn't care. What the hell was that? Look like some sort of giant turtle in a trench coat.
I think they need to be scary to the point where you're like, that's a giant turtle, not scary to the point where they're menacing. I think that's the thing. It's like, I think the
when
whole
April
point of
first
it
wakes
is
up, she's terrified of them at first, and then is like, because I mean, you're talking to a talking turtle,
an anamorphic turtle.
That is also like your size. Like, that's terrifying. What the hell? But then after that, you're like, oh, these aren't really scary. I mean, after all, it's
because including April O'Neil, April O'Neil or Casey Jones or any of those people, who would warm up to these characters that they look like villains?
Yeah.
Do you mean Toka and Razor aren't getting best friends in movie 2 because no one has to be their friends, and that's the thing. Even in their dumbness in their minds, they're still not going to get friends. They look horrible. Like they look like they're scared. They're going to eat you.
They're drooling,
a turtle that looks like it's going to eat you, that you're never going to be. No one's ever going to have friends with that.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I think that the biggest thing is that they're life-size turtles. That's the scary part. You can get over that. It's also they're unassuming. You look at them like, oh, this is a life-size turtle, and then they just kick your ass because they know karate, and they're ninjas. Yeah. So like that part of it also is the whole reason why I like the original movie versus the new ones. Michael Bay
Agreed.
also just likes to blow shit up. He's got some sort of mental problem. Like he was the one that was starting trash cans on fire in his backyard, right? I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, he was that kid.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was
Had
taking
the
like
firecrackers taped to
dead-
every action figure.
he was taking dead rats and like spraying them out and like doing like body examinations in his backyard. Crazy people. But yeah, no, it's this is the pinnacle of Marvel or TMNT movies was the original. And it's not just because it's the original, but they did such a good job with it, I think, in 1990 that I'm hoping they bring that back with Last Ronin. Let's really hope for some like, and it doesn't have to be exact because things move on. We need to modernize some things.
Yep.
But they need to have some sort of elements that bring back that thing, like CGI Splinter, all you want, because the puppet version of Splinter is just it's kind of creepy. But everything else,
good.
So
it's not good. And I'll tell you, I feel like the second one it gets worse.
Yes, it does.
I don't know why. I don't know because
they
see more of him or because what I don't know, but it gets worse.
They perfected hair in CGI, so I'm okay with them doing that in that sense. Yeah. But just don't make him creepy and don't make I don't know. It's a weird thing. So I'm hoping for the future to be a much better live action Turtles movies to come, because agreed. I think all of us are waiting for it, and for us, we'll be in the theater opening night to go see Last Ronin. So, but yeah, so 4.5, 4.25, right around there for TMNT from 1990. And again, I'll give a shout out to us. We got our own comic convention coming up this summer here in the Bangor, Maine area in Brewer, Maine. But our buddies over at Bangor Comic and Toy Con are putting on a convention on October 4th through the 6th in Bangor, Maine. If you live in New England and want to come out, there's a number of Turtles guests that were either in the suits or actors, voice actors, or Judith Hoag will be there and so on and so forth. They'll be doing all kinds of things all weekend with stuff like that. But also check out our buddy Bob Takic, who did a TMNT #1 from 2024 here over at IDW variant cover for Galactic Comics and Collectibles, which is available at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. Check that out. But you can get it signed over at the convention too, because Bob will be there. He'll have prints and he'll have all kinds of
I have
stuff.
now officially signed a TMNT #1, which I tried to convince the person that you do not want me to sign this thing. He's like, oh, I really do.
Yeah. Exactly. But and then Joe Schmalke is doing also one variants for those. Our buddy Joe over there, as well as done Last Ronin stuff and other TMNT covers. So he'll be at this convention as well. We'll be there promoting our convention, Galacticon. But yeah, October 4th through the 6th. And so if you're a Turtles fan, this is a place for you to be. I'll tell you that right now. Turtles
this has got to be on your map of New England, like Turtle convention stuff. Like, all right, I got to go to BCTC because they managed to put together that 90 movie.
Yep. And if you're not want to come all the way to Bangor, I love all conventions. So Granite State Con in New Hampshire also has a bunch of Turtle people coming. I believe Kevin's going to be there. So Kevin Eastman will be signing autographs at that one too. So if you don't want to come up to Bangor, I'm not going to say you should.
Maybe Galacticon needs to go promote there.
Get some signatures from
working that weekend.
So it's awesome. So TMNT came out in 1990. I think you should all watch it right now. Like, turn this off and go watch it. It is a phenomenal movie, and if you're a Turtles fan, it's great. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And if you're old, the kids are old enough to watch it, show it to them, because I think it's worth it. We could.
Yep. And if you watched it way back when and haven't watched it since, go put it on now.
Yes, go put it on now. And if they ever do show it back in the theaters, go see it in the theaters, because it's a phenomenal movie. And then pick up this. It's a French version of the book. I'll be selling this if anybody wants to buy this. No, I'm just kidding. But TMNT on VHS. So that's awesome. You keep it real, Paul. We'll be back. I was trying to figure out what we're doing next. I don't know. The schedule looks pretty good. Episodes here. Paul Eaton returns to watch Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Oh,
for horror.
All right, I'm excited. I've never actually seen this movie, so I'm excited.
No, sorry, that's after that. You're coming back to review Swamp Thing for a week. The DC movie Swamp Thing. You'll be doing Attack of the Killer Tomatoes after that. So I think what we're gonna do is horror week. It's gonna be Swamp Thing here at the podcast. Which will also feature interviews with CJ Lead, author, Isaac Goodhart, and Tate Bromble will be returning to discuss the Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Case Halloween special.
Nice.
And then also Nat Cassidy, who's an author, coming on to talk about his book. But we're also going to watch Swamp Thing in there. And then you'll come back around Halloween is when the episode 4 with Attack of the Killer Tomatoes will be
sweet.
On. So, wow, I got a tickle in my throat now. Perfect timing, right? Paul, I love having you on. You got to come back on more often and just sit there in the corner if you have to. But you know, you can talk if you want. But
Yeah. Yeah, you can have interviews with people, and I'm just the idiot that's in the corner. Just kind of
like, who is that guy? Is that your producer? No, he's just sitting there.
he's
He
just
wants
there.
to watch.
Yeah,
He's
there. He's fine.
He doesn't even have a microphone on. He's just sitting there. It's just a camera on him. There's not even his
Wait.
volume's off. Like, wait, why is he taking his clothes off? No, don't worry about it.
That
But
will get ratings.
Until next time, buy TMNT #1 variant from Galactic Comics and Collectibles.com. Our buddy Bob did a wonderful job on that, and obviously,
Hell yeah, support
Paul
your
has a
local
bunch of them.
artists.
So yes. So until next time, Paul. See you, toots.